Hello and welcome to the Philippines. Got some good news, especially for those who trade in US dollars. And I've done a number of money videos in the past. Going to go over some of the information. The weak peso means if you're using US dollars, your spending power increases. Of course, there's the opposite negative effect of inflation also because it costs more to import so many of the goods here. Uh, Philippines imports much more than they export. How long will this good exchange rate last? We're going to get into that, some of the details and projections, and then I'm going to get into the new mask rules that are going to be coming out shortly. According to everything, the president of the Philippines, Marcos, is going to loosen up, make more lenient the rules about masks. So we'll get into that here a little bit later. Anyway, the economists, the peso will stay weak as trade gap widens, oil prices rise. The rate has reached over 57 pesos to the US dollar. And yesterday I've rent coming up shortly, so I went to HSBC Bank, which allows me to withdraw 40,000 pesos, and and they don't charge me a fee. My Wells Fargo bank gives me a very close to that amount, that exchange rate, and they only charge me $5 for that withdrawal. So that's a good thing. Now HSBC gives me the option to use their exchange rate, and then they don't pick up on the foreign bank charge, I guess, the $5, but their exchange rate is a couple pesos less than the actual exchange rate. So the way I do it saves me a little bit of money. I've done other videos about money and compared with many other nations too. I'll put a link to that video at the end of this video, so you can go back and review that. I've compared the many others, the Thai baht, the euro, the British pound, and Canadian dollar, Australian dollar. Inquirer.net, Manila, Philippines. With expensive oil bloating Philippine imports being paid in US dollars, economists expect the peso to remain weak and spill over to high inflation. Jumping down a couple paragraphs, Philippine imports are expected to sustain the robust double-digit pace of growth as the oil import bill more than doubles due to pricey crude oil. ING said the Philippines is a net oil importer. ING senior Philippines economist Nicholas Mapa on Monday noted that the yawning merchandise trade deficit was among the top reasons for the peso's weakness. It's the fundamental reason why the peso is down. More dollar outflows, bloated imports, versus dollar inflows from exports, remittances from OFWs, and the business process outsourcing sector. The peso was currently trading in 17-year lows, 55 to 56 to 1, and now it's even set a record 57, over 57 to 1. The net of these transactions is the current account balance, which the Bangko Sentral ng Pilipinas, the main bank here in the Philippines, expects to swell to an all-time high deficit of 19.5 billion this year, and only to be surpassed next year's projected 20 billion deficit. Other think tanks like London-based Capital Economics also expect the Philippines trade deficit to linger. Capital Economics forecast imports to have grown 22% last May against 5.5% export increase. In a report, Goldman Sachs Economics Research said that with the Philippines peso depreciation, risks alongside recently approved minimum wage hikes, very minor, I must say, business costs stemming from higher import costs, wages and rental costs are likely to be passed through to consumers as post-reopening demand continues to be strong. Given that the Philippines is a large commodity importer, including fuel and food, a weak peso contributes meaningfully to higher inflation. And I have definitely seen the inflation here. Many of the I shop at a number of stores. S&R, which is like a Costco in many parts of the world. They've got a lot of imported products. I get my hamburger from New Zealand, I think, which actually isn't very expensive. Not bad, not bad at all. Well, I don't know. Relatively speaking, I buy the grass-fed beef, and I think it's around 250 pesos per kilogram, I think. So I'm not sure how that relates to the rest of the world as far as meat goes. But coffee has gone up, and I read many months ago that Brazil and Colombia were having issues, and coffee was going to go up. So I've stocked up a little bit, but coffee's gone up. So I'm going to make some changes in the brands that I buy. I bought some Ubon coffee, which is kind of medium. I like a stronger coffee, Kirkland brand, but I'm going to try several Filipino brands. They are Philippines has many coffee plantations, and I'm going to start trying the various Filipino brands, save a little money on my coffee. And inflation is a personal thing. You make decisions on how you spend, where you spend, and I've been going to the market much more often. I can get fresher produce at a much less price than in the supermarkets. Not only that, but in the supermarkets. So oftentimes everything is prepackaged, and you have all this garbage. You got a plastic tray or a styrofoam tray, and covered with plastic, and then you have to dispose of all that garbage. It looks nice, but it's garbage, and just we have too much garbage in the world. Um, anyway, yeah, just what I buy in broccoli, and I buy quite a bit of broccoli. The broccoli, more than what I save on broccoli going to the market, more than pays for my taxi ride, just for instance, and then everything else I buy. I am shopping online much more often, and what happened with stores closing down, retail and travel closing down for much of the last 2 years is that people learned to buy online. And now I think SM Mall even had a bunch of signs up, buy local, because they've lost a lot of their customers. Customers are buying online, or they're because millions of Filipinos still don't have jobs. They're going to the markets. They're going to the cheaper outlets and not the more expensive malls. So all these lockdowns have changed the way consumers spend, and it's having a major effect on the stores. I see more and more people in the malls. Not nearly what it used to be, by the way. Uh, but you don't see many people carrying around bags that they purchased a lot of things from, except in the grocery store. They're still going to the grocery store. There are many articles the last couple of days that the Philippines is going to drop some of the mask mandates, especially for wearing masks out in the open, basically. Still going to be, there will be businesses and malls probably that will say, oh, you still need to have your mask on. Happened to me a few days ago when I went to Ayala, and the people have been conditioned, even though the mayor made the statement, the executive order, that masks were not required. When I got to the mall, they required me to put it on. So it will be a hit and miss type thing for a while, probably, even though many countries, I think over 55 countries in the world, have dropped all vaccine requirements, mask mandates, everything. Come to our country, enjoy, spend your money. I have worked in a supervisory position in a couple factories in my early career days, and around chemical inhalants, where we were required, the people were required to wear various types of masks, and you learn very quickly that you need to have a proper mask to do the proper job. You need the proper tool to do the proper job. And the same thing with masks. And I'm not going to, I think YouTube is still censoring a lot of information when you discuss masks, but I'm going to just bring up some uh, very common sense tells you, you need the proper tool uh, to do the job. And 99% of the masks out there are cloth masks, and if you read the data, they will stop large particles, but they aren't going to stop much else than that. Iloilo lifts mandatory wearing of face masks. They followed Cebu City and now the country. Looking at the Republic of the Philippines news agency, and executive order needed to implement optional face mask use outdoors. I've read a number of articles starting yesterday stating that they expect the president, Marcos, when he gets back from travel to other countries, that he will sign an executive order stating that basically face masks are optional in outdoor environments at least. But then I think it's going to be up to businesses can decide. May still be required in medical settings, hospitals, medical centers, and such. Anyway, let's get into this article just a little bit. Filipinos will still be required to wear their face mask until President Marcos issues an executive order proving its optional use outdoors and other guidelines. The press secretary on Thursday reminded the public that the Interagency Task Force for the Management of Emerging Infectious Diseases, IATF-EID, has so far only recommended the optional wearing of face masks outdoors, which surprised a lot of people that they did that. The IATF recommended that face masks be voluntary outdoors in non-crowded spaces with good ventilation, though the vulnerable, the elderly, and immunocompromised are still encouraged to wear their masks. And let me interject here. There's never any discussion. There is never any discussion on the quality of masks, and that should be the number one issue. Even my observation, staying with a friend for 12 days in a hospital, virtually no one wore medical grade masks in the hospital, including most doctors. And I asked one doctor about that, and she said, well, they're too expensive, and we'll have to charge the patient every time we put one on. Well, that's a poor excuse, I think. For those of you who are interested, I think YouTube is one of those great media companies that still doesn't allow you to talk about specifics of masks, so I'm not going to get into any more details. You can find, if you get off the mainstream media websites, you can find much more information related to that. The IATF has resolved to recommend to the president that there should be, or the president will issue an executive order regarding this policy. She, however, said she is optimistic that the president would approve the IATF proposal, and they've been very cautious, very conservatively cautious over the last 2.5 years, so it's kind of surprised people. Citing data from different Association of the Southeast Asian Nation, ASEAN countries, he said there is barely a difference between the number of COVID-19 cases in areas where wearing a face mask was required and in areas where they were partially or completely lifted, as long as the minimum health standards are strictly enforced. Now, I think that is somebody's opinion. I don't think that part is fact. That's my opinion. My opinion is that this last part of this statement is opinion and not based on facts. Minimum health standards are not enforced. People wear dirty masks over and over and over again. They don't social distance because they think these cheap masks are saving them. And it's in virtually every newspaper now. Only a couple yesterday, I think. This is the Inquirer.net. Face masks to be optional when outdoors nationwide. And the fact of the matter is, Governor Garcia of Cebu Province had stated this several months ago, that out in the open, no face masks are required. They're optional. Mayor Rama here in Cebu City, which is separate, independent of Cebu Province, made the same statement recently, and there was been some pushback from the Department of Health, and I read that that decision was put on hold for a while. But anyway, the president finally is expected to sign this and follow in the steps of so many countries that have done this much earlier. The government has decided to make the wearing of face masks voluntary in open spaces nationwide, a major policy shift to relax COVID-19 protocols as the country's transmissions to the new normal of treating the virus as endemic, just like the ordinary flu. In a press briefing conducted via video conferencing from Singapore, Press Secretary Angeles said the IATF issued the resolution last Monday and that President Marcos would soon issue an executive order approving the new policy and other guidelines that the task force has proposed. Now, I have not heard of any of those other proposals that are mentioned here, so we'll just have to wait and see. So that is a small step, a very small step, I will say, because I suspect that many businesses and malls will still require it because it's not outdoors. Um, so the Philippines has a long ways to go to catch up with much of the rest of the world who have dropped all requirements. No vaccine required, no face mask required to travel and to enjoy. Most people, 90, 95, 99% of people, are not going to spend thousands of dollars, pesos, whatever, to travel around the world to go to some place where they're going to be inconvenienced by travel restrictions, mask requirements, and all those sorts of things. So, anyway, thanks for coming along. Stay safe, stay healthy, and I'll see you next time.